As Lily approached Kihija, a sense of unease settled over her. The grand entrance was uncharacteristically chaotic, with security personnel scurrying about and a tense atmosphere hanging in the air. Pulling up to the building, she noticed Orion near the entrance, his expression grim. A few of Orion's personal militia were already present, having been called back early from their training mission in Utah. The normally serene surrounding was filled with activity, and the plain-clothed guards were nowhere to be seen. "Orion?" Lily called out, her voice tinged with worry as she approached him. He turned, his gaze fixed on her, filled with a mixture of concern and anger. "Where's Candace?" Lily asked, her eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of her second-being lover. Orion's face darkened, his expression reflecting the gravity of the situation. "She was kidnapped," he replied, his voice taut with suppressed emotion. Lily's heart skipped a beat as the words sunk in. "Kidnapped?" she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as she struggled to process the news. Orion nodded, his jaw clenching. "Yes. And our plain-clothed security detail is nowhere to be found," he said, his voice low and tense. Lily's mind whirled, the implications of the situation sinking in. Kihija, usually a picture of tranquility, had become the center of a chaotic scene. She glanced around, taking in the sight of the hastily assembled militia, their weapons at the ready. "What do we do?" she asked, turning her gaze back to Orion. Orion's personal militia had indeed been called back early from their annual training mission in Utah. However, something had gone awry in the past 30 minutes before their estimated arrival time. The communication with them had been cut off abruptly, leaving Orion and Lily in the dark about their whereabouts and condition. This sudden disappearance added to the growing sense of unease and uncertainty surrounding the Kihija property. Orion's face tightened as he glanced down at a tablet in his hands. "Something's off," he muttered, his fingers tapping at the screen. "The last communication we received from my militia indicated they were only 30 minutes away. But now, there's nothing. No response to our hails." The militia's sudden silence was a stark contrast to their earlier updates. "Could it be a technical issue?" Lily asked, her eyes darting nervously around the surroundings. But Orion shook his head, his expression grim. "Not likely. They were trained to respond even in the most remote locations. This silence is too deliberate." Lily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to focus. She delved into her own mind, searching for the familiar connection of Orion's thoughts. But the usual ease of their telepathic communication was strangely absent, and she found herself grasping at a silent void. A realization slowly dawned on her. The telepathy she shared with Orion only worked in the presence of Candace. Just then, an unusual sight caught Lily's attention. A wolf with a peculiar, unearthly appearance suddenly materialized nearby. It wasn't a species native to Northern California, where Orion's land was located. The wolf stood motionless, its intense gaze fixed on Orion and Lily, as if sizing them up. The standoff was brief, but intense, and then the wolf abruptly turned and darted into the surrounding woods, disappearing into the foliage with a fluid grace. Orion's gaze followed the wolf's path as it vanished into the trees. He had never seen a wolf like that before, and its presence at Kihija was definitely unexpected. "That was odd," he murmured, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the wolf had disappeared. Lily's eyes were wide with wonder and confusion. "What was that?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity. "It didn't look like any wolf I've ever seen before." Orion shrugged, his expression contemplative. "I don't know," he admitted. "It wasn't a species native to this region, and its appearance was unusual, to say the least." The sudden appearance of the strange wolf had added yet another layer of mystery to the already puzzling circumstances. Lily couldn't shake off the feeling that there was a deeper connection between the incident and Candace's kidnapping. Orion looked at Lily, his expression grave. I had 5 of my most trusted men leave the training mission early when the plainclothed security team stopped responding, he explained. Candace had sent them a message to return, and they've been approaching in stealth mode. We don't know where the rest of the militia is. The revelation about the other militia sent a chill down Lily's spine. So we don't know what happened to the rest of the team? She asked, her voice tight with worry. Orion shook his head, his jaw clenching. No, we've lost contact with the rest of the militia. Their location and status are currently unknown. Lily bit her lip, her concern for Candace weighing heavily on her mind. She glanced nervously at Orion, her voice slightly tremulous. Maybe we should reach out to Andrea, she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. I know she's a force to be reckoned with. Maybe she could help us find Candace. Orion nodded, a hint of resignation in his expression. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already nearby, he said. But I suggest you head inside. I'll head into the forest to meet her. As he spoke, the sounds of trees falling over and snapping filled the air, creating a tetrahedron temple made of fallen trees. The walls rose to various heights, with the side wall between 5 and 9 feet tall, while smaller trees obscured the view, creating a slight opening at a corner. Orion's voice rang out, "You should go inside now. I'll meet Andrea and see what she knows." Orion nodded, a hint of resignation in his expression. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already nearby, he said. But I suggest you head inside. I'll head into the forest to meet her. As he spoke, the sounds of trees falling over and snapping filled the air, creating a tetrahedron temple made of fallen trees. The walls rose to various heights, with the side wall between 5 and 9 feet tall, while smaller trees obscured the view, creating a slight opening at a corner. Orion's voice rang out, "You should go inside now. I'll meet Andrea and see what she knows." Lily stared at the makeshift temple, her eyes widening at the sight before her. The air around her seemed still, and the only sound she could hear was her own thudding heartbeat. With a slight nod, she turned to head inside, her mind racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation, leaving Orion to meet the formidable presence that was Andrea, or Zoo as most people knew her. As Lily stepped through the doorway, a sudden gust of wind materialized, lifting her off her feet and carrying her into the tetrahedron wood structure. The air was filled with Zoo's laughter, her voice echoing through the enclosure as she brought Lily to a soft landing. Orion, standing outside, was caught in the powerful wind as Lily passed him by, his eyes widening in surprise as he heard Zoo's distinctive laugh. Well, look who we have here," Zoo said, her voice dripping with a mix of amusement and authority. She continued, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Lily. "Little Lily, caught in our little web," Zoo teased, her voice carrying a hint of menace. "I've been expecting you." Zoo chuckled, the sound low and dangerous. "I'm here to fast-track your training," she told Lily, her eyes narrowing. "We know about you being the key, but we don't have time to waste. We need to get you up to speed. And fast." Branches and vines suddenly sprung to life, slithering through the air and wrapping tightly around both Lily and Orion. Within moments, they were ensnared, their bodies bound by the living tendrils and positioned to face each other. Zoo suddenly grabbed Lily by her hair, the unexpected action causing Orion to instinctively reach out from his trap, his hand stretching forward in a protective gesture. In that moment of distraction, Zoo swiftly produced a knife and, in a horrifying display of violence, stabbed Orion through his outstretched palm. the sharp blade skewering his flesh and eliciting a shocked gasp from Orion. Lily's scream filled the air as she poured all her energy into breaking free from her bonds. Simultaneously, Orion, his expression a mix of pain and determination, used his ability to teleport out of the trap, his body materializing next to Lily in the blink of an eye. Ignoring his wounded hand, Orion grabbed Lily firmly, the act of teleporting another person for the first time straining his powers. In a dizzying moment, they rematerialized in Kihija, the sudden transition leaving both of them off balance for a brief moment. Lily stumbled, her body unsteady as she tried to regain her bearings. Orion, meanwhile, clutched his wounded hand, wincing in pain as he steadied himself. Orion quickly retrieved a first aid kit from the nearest bathroom. His movements steady despite the pain he was in. He and Lily began to discuss the recent events, their voices filled with shock and disbelief. As they spoke, the realization slowly dawned on them that they still needed to deal with Zhu. And Orion admitted that he hadn't teleported anyone else before, much less to a place where he couldn't see. The enormity of their situation began to sink in. Orion carefully began to clean and treat his wounded hand, wincing slightly as he wrapped it in gauze. All the while, he and Lily continued to discuss the situation at hand. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a rustling sound coming from outside. Orion's gaze snapped to the window, his expression hardening. "She's here," he murmured, his voice tense with a mix of concern and determination. He quickly finished bandaging his hand, his senses on high alert as the sound of branches cracking and sticks snapping drew closer. The scene unfolds to reveal Zhu, perched regally in a lush throne-like chair at the center of an opulent open-air cafe. The setting is made entirely of intertwined vines, branches, and leaves, creating a natural and organic ambiance. Only 3 chairs sit at the single table. Zhu's chair stands out as the most extravagant, while the others are slightly less elaborate. The platform of the cafe is raised, with steps on each side, while bird perches adorned with crows and doves add a touch of foreign charm. Zhu calmly motioned for them to take a seat, her expression almost neutral. She glanced toward the bird perches, her gaze lingering on the birds perched there. Orion's eyes followed her gaze, his gaze narrowing as he observed the birds more closely. He noticed that the doves had unusual patterns and that the crow's feathers appeared almost matte. Lily then asked if the birds had been made using being powers. Zhu chuckled lightly, her demeanor somewhat playful as she responded to their observation about the birds. "Sort of," she began, a hint of humor in her voice. "You see, these birds here, you 3 brought them here from a portal in a new world." Her tone turned more serious as she continued, "But now, you need to master opening that portal properly. That way, my baby sister can come back." She paused, her gaze momentarily fixed on the birds before continuing. "I'll cage these birds for you, and Zaylin can use them to help construct a more stable portal." Her face showed slight annoyance as she added, "But I need to leave. Zaleon's lusting after me will only slow him down." The statement held a mixture of mockery and confidence, hinting at her own power and self-assurance. An air of mystery enveloped the scene as Zhu vanished into her tetrahedron structure, the vines rapidly retracting and the leaves falling away as she left. Her voice echoed through the air, filled with an almost gloating satisfaction. "Oh, look, here comes Zaylin now." Suddenly, amid the foliage, a deer emerged from the forest, its curious wandering movements capturing their attention. The deer's presence seemed to carry an aura of innocence and grace as it appeared, completely oblivious to the tension and danger that had just unfolded in this peculiar cafe. Its elegant form contrasted with the otherworldly surroundings, its doe eyes flicking around the clearing, taking in the unfamiliar scene. Orion and Lily exchange a tense glance, knowing that Zalan could make an appearance at any moment.